In DC, for DC. DC Radio, 96.3 HD4 and DCRadio.gov.
Welcome to another edition of Inside the MFL. I'm your host, Richard Myles, along with Nicole Nelson, Kelsey. I'm getting a little tongue-tied, but don't pay me no mind. Kelsey Nelson and Robert Gatewood to Inside the MFL. We have some special guests here today. Also, the MFL is moving to Africa. Miss Nelson, what you have on there? We got Mr. Gatewood here.
I am still getting behind you messing up my name, but it's okay. Lots of big moves happening.
You get too
with
many
the
awards
MFL
anyway.
Going. Lots of big things with the minor football league going to Africa. Kelsey, Nicole Nelson, but a lot of special things. And I think I'm most excited about our very special guest joining us in studio today. You know, we were recently connected with Miss Sheryl Morley. Sheryl is someone that we just recently met doing very exciting things with our good friend Bruno, who is a friend to the show, and I know will also come on today's show. And she's working with an amazing doctor that goes by the name of Dr. Wallach, and she's going to tell us about the great things that the two are doing. We're going to ask some questions, and we really want to talk about health and wellness, which of course relates to the minor football league and keeping the whole body healthy and whole. And of course, as always, we have our special guru in studios, Robert Gatewood. So I'm excited to get the conversation started. So where would you like to take it from there, Myles?
Well, Mr. Gatewood, I want to say congratulations to him for the Hall of Fame. I mean, everybody seems to be getting awards but me. You know I'm jealous, Mr. Gatewood.
Because you are the bestower of awards, so you don't have to get an award.
Oh, man, here we go with that. Okay, well, we're going to get in. We have a very exciting show for you this morning. We also want to acknowledge the fact that we do have a doctor, a very prominent doctor here to talk about wellness, because we want to protect our players as well as our front office people and our people just in general, Robert, you know. So I think that's very important. What you think?
I think this is a great show. I think having the good doctor on the line and Miss Morley here in the studio, we're in for a great show. And I like to see the conflation of all these great things that are so pertinent to health, wellness, and sports coming all together on this one mic today. So I'm excited about the show.
And Miss Nelson, what are your thoughts on that before you bring on our guests?
I mean, working in the sports industry, health and wellness is huge. Just coming from Super Bowl, every single conversation I had talked about health and wellness, whether that be physical health and wellness or mental health and wellness. I think they're two very hot topics right now. We know the world is trying to get healthier. We're all trying to live longer. So I think this conversation is right on time.
Especially me. You know, what you say, Robert?
Man, get a picture of health. You look up health in the dictionary. Here we have Mr. Myles.
I want to live to be 400 years old.
You can do
it. But I'm going to try. But let's bring our special guests on, Miss Nelson.
Sure. So first, I will welcome Sheryl Morley on. Sheryl is someone who just does many amazing things, but is someone that truly has committed her life to health and wellness that we recently got connected with. So, Sheryl, I will first let you tell the audience a little bit about your background, and then we'll welcome on our very special guest, Dr. Wallach. So, Sheryl, take it away.
Thank you so much, Kelsey, and thank you so much for having me on the show today. I was super excited when you asked me to come on and kind of get this message of health and wellness out. I've been working with Dr. Wallach for about 25 years, and I heard about Dr. Wallach when I was working at Taco Bell, and I was eating all that...
Yum, yum.
I know. I was eating all that terrible food, and it really got myself in a situation where I was quite overweight, and I was just really feeling sick, and I listened to Dr. Wallach's. He's got a CD that talks about health and wellness, and really changed my life. I had to change the way on some of the things that I was eating. And then I was able to really rebuild my entire body with the nutritional supplements and lost all the weight and just took it from there. I went on the road with Dr. Wallach, traveled with him for years and years, and saw thousands and thousands of people getting better, and I just really decided that it was my mission in life to get this message of health and wellness out to people, because I think a lot of times people don't know that there's somewhere else to turn besides drugs or what their friends are doing, and so I really am passionate about getting this message of health and wellness out to everybody that we can, and it's certainly athletes.
Yeah, well, that's funny. She looked at me when she said that. I'm a former athlete, so I got an excuse for a little bit weight. But Robert, and listen to this young lady talk about that in terms of, because I definitely got to lose some weight, and I definitely know I need to do some things. And for the most part, I have done great things to assure my body and my health, but I still cheat a little bit. How do you feel about that, Mr. Gatewood?
Well, I'm looking at the title of the book by Mr. Wallach and the slave quarter cures. I'm thinking that this is related to the fact that in our community we see a proliferation of illnesses that affect us disproportionately. Things like hypertension, high cholesterol, and is there a link? And I'm just reading between the lines here and between what Ms. Morley has just stated and looking at the title of the book. I'm seeing there's a link between race and some of these illnesses that are proliferating in our community. Am I correct?
What would you say to that, Ms. Morley?
Yes, absolutely. You are absolutely correct. And it's the lie, I believe, that we have been told, right? And Dr. Wallach is the one that wrote this book, and he is I would love it if we could bring him on and just start kind of talking about this a little bit, because he would be great to explain what the link is, I guess.
Okay, but as Mr. Gay would say, I think genetically it does, because we used to eat differently as opposed to now, because not by choice. I mean, because we didn't have a choice then. So I think without being a doctor or authority on this, I think it makes more sense to kind of answer it in that term, because certain things we couldn't eat, we weren't allowed to eat.
I spent most of my adult years in corporate America. I worked in the food industry and as a nutritionist for Diet to Go. And we spent our entire reason for being was to produce food that was low cholesterol, low fat, low sodium, because we saw the link between health and what we ingest. And I think as we, as a society, move towards, more and more medicines. Right now, everybody's being medicated to death.
Yes.
So I think we need to come back. We need to come back home to nutrition and diet. And I'm glad that we're addressing this topic because I think it's so important.
Ms. Nelson?
Yeah, I'm very excited to bring Dr. Wallach on. I think, Robert hit on all points, and you're talking to someone that has a Southern Black family. So food is very important. And the way I grew up and everything, we added extra seasoning to, extra salt to, extra butter, cooking in Crisco oil and everything else. And it's just part of the culture, right? We like to say, you're better big boned. That's what we like to say down south. So, I mean, that's what you're taught, right? And so, you live in a place like D.C. where we're kind of more health conscious. And I think society as a whole is getting more health conscious. I don't think I've ever lived in a point in my life where I've heard so many people being vegan or being on a keto diet or just so many different things that people are doing now, where it's hard to order lunch for your office because everybody's something different.
Yes.
And so with that, I think we'll bring Dr. Wallach on. I think to address Robert's question, is there a link between race and some of the health questions that kind of affect, I guess, the African-American community disproportionately? So Dr. Wallach, without further ado, I'd like to welcome you on.
All right.
Well, thank you so much. Appreciate being with you and speaking to your audience. I'll say Shalala Gashle, which is Zulu. I spent 2 years in the bush in Africa, so I appreciate the African culture. I can speak Zulu fairly fluently, and Matabele and that kind of stuff. And have two books. One of is Slave Quarter Cures, and the other one is Black Gene Lies. And Pastor Creflo Dollar from Atlanta, Georgia, actually funded the book and the CDs and DVDs, Black Gene Lies. And there are no genetically transmitted diseases in black people. That's all a myth. My thesis for my postdoctoral fellowship, which is kind of like a PhD degree, is in the Smithsonian Institute as a national treasure, because I've proved that there are no genetically transmitted diseases, even in black folks. Even things like sickle cell anemia is actually a birth defect, but not a genetically transmitted birth defect. It was caused by mama missing a nutrient when the bone marrow is forming, the bone marrow cells that make hemoglobin. And so they're dysfunctional because mama was missing that nutrient when they were forming and only produce dysfunctional hemoglobin, but it's not a genetic thing. The same deficiency occurs in white folks and yellow folks and red folks. It's called thalassemia and everybody else, and sickle cell anemia in black folks, but it's all the same disease, just a nutritional deficiency birth defect. And high blood pressure is a very simple disease to prevent, very simple disease to reverse. Obesity is very simple to prevent, very simple to reverse. Things like diabetes is very simple to prevent, very simple to reverse. And people haven't urinated in 10 years or on dialysis 6 days a week. Usually in a couple of weeks I can get them off of dialysis. And Sheryl has been with me, like she says, for almost 30 years. And so she's seen miracles in the black community. And we worked, Evander Holyfield, you may remember him. He was a heavyweight champion, and he had to quit because of a heart disease. I'm the guy who rebuilt his heart. He came back, regained his title, and boxed for 3 more years after he was told he'd never box again because of his heart disease. Same thing with Theo Ratliff. Andy Young, I rebuilt Andy Young's knees, and he introduced me to lots of people, including, I don't know if you're familiar with Delisha Jones. She's a 6'5" a black lady who was on the women's Olympic basketball team. She won 3 gold medals, and she owns a couple of women's basketball teams now in the WBA, Women's Basketball Association. And so I'm very familiar with the black community and have created products that deal with over 900 different diseases, and we can prevent all of them, and most of them are reversible.
This is Mr. Myles here. It sounds like I know the pharmaceutical company don't want to hear from you. This conversation.
Well, they don't like me very much.
I'm quite sure.
My book, Dead Doctors Don't Lie. They don't like that one.
Right, Miss Nelson. I know you are. I'd like for you to horn on into that. Miss Nelson. Robert.
Sorry, guys. I mean,
she may have,
I think we live in a...
She may have fainted.
Yeah.
That's too much information.
I think I was absorbing all the information, and I think we live in a country now, where health insurance costs, pharmaceutical costs, everything is going up. We're working so much to try to prevent things, which basically means you have a cabinet full of different pills, sometimes with many different side effects, that you're taking to prevent one thing that might cause another. And it sounds like from what you're saying, Dr. Wallach, is that it seems like there's a lot of more healthy ways that we can do things to kind of prevent or reverse things that are happening. Yeah.
It's Robin, correct? Okay. Now, the thing you have to appreciate, there's only one class of pharmaceuticals that cure anything, and that's antibiotics. They will kill bacteria and fungus and yeast and that kind of thing. All other pharmaceuticals are designed purposely just to treat symptoms, so doctors can get enough money by having you just take the pharmaceutical to subdue the symptom so they can get enough money to pay the tuition for their kids to go to college. Okay? You can't name me a disease that is fixable with a pharmaceutical. For instance, arthritis. I can prevent and reverse arthritis. Lupus, I can prevent and reverse lupus. Alzheimer's disease, I can prevent and reverse Alzheimer's disease. One of my famous ones is from Charlotte, North Carolina, Ray McGregor. He had Alzheimer's disease for 11 years. 3 years he was being treated with pharmaceuticals, and then 8 years he was in a coma in a nursing home being fed through a G-tube, and his sister called me and said he's got 0 brain waves, want to pull the plug on him. Can you do anything for him? We put him on our program for Alzheimer's disease through his G-tube. As God is my witness, in 3 days' time, he wakes up, gets dressed, goes back to work at the bank, and nobody knew him because they weren't there 11 years earlier when he had to quit because of his Alzheimer's disease. And he went right back to his desk and thought he'd only been asleep one night. But we do this. We get people who haven't urinated in 10 years. They're on dialysis 6 days a week, and then say 2 weeks' time they're urinating, and 6 weeks' time they're off of dialysis. Because we go for the cause of the problem, which are always nutritional deficiencies and eating poor diets that cause these problems.
Kelsey, I know you want to finish your question before I swing it over to Robert.
No, I think you covered it great, but I guess just something in my mind that keeps coming up and something that I talk with most athletes about is CTE. And I'm just curious, is there anything from your knowledge or from your work that you've studied that can prevent or cure CTE that's a hot topic right now?
What is CTE?
Sorry. So CTE is right now what they're saying that Aaron Hernandez had traces of before he committed suicide.
Well, what is it?
What
is it? I don't know this.
Well,
I don't know it by that CTE. What is CTE?
Well, it comes from too many knocks upside your head. That would come from originally.
Brain damage.
But yeah, well, it didn't want it, but
it's
it
like
is brain damage.
traumatic. It's a, I can't say the last one. Encephalopathy. Chronic traumatic.
Yeah.
So brain disease, brain injuries that they're saying athletes get the most because of all the hits to their head.
Okay. Well, I played football. I was a middle linebacker and pulling guard. I wrestled for 6 years at University of Missouri, and so I know about head trauma and that kind of stuff. But you have to appreciate that the skull gets osteoporosis and arthritis just like your knees and your hips and your ankles and shoulders and wrists and elbows and things. And I created a program to rebuild the skull from the arthritis and osteoporosis piece, and then which can cause everything from paralysis to numbness and tingling in the hands and 12 other diseases and so forth. So kind of like a sciatica of the shoulders, and then also things like they're related to Parkinson's disease, MS, Lou Gehrig's disease, Huntington's disease, dementias that are not Alzheimer's disease. These are all easily prevented and reversed. And so if somebody came to me with a head injury and they had the symptoms that were in, for instance, their fingers and hands, it could have been a whiplash in the neck where the spinal cord comes out of the skull. Now, most people think your spinal cord is just in your lower back. Well, the spinal cord is formed in the brain, comes out of the big hole in the back of your skull called the foramen magnum, and then goes down your neck, down your upper back, down to your tailbone. Anywhere along the line, you can have a problem. Well, when you have osteoporosis of the skull or you get a whiplash injury, which athletes often do, especially in football where they get tackled, they get a squeezing of that spinal cord as it comes out of the skull, and they get all kinds of symptoms, everything from complete paralysis from the neck down, which is called Erb's palsy, ERB''S palsy. They can get what's called things where they get numbness and tingling in their hands.
Hey, Doc.
You have carpal tunnel syndrome.
Doc, let me, real quick, because we're running out of time. I want to get Mr. Gatewood in here before we turn it back to Ms. Nelson. So what do you think, Robin? I know we have a couple of more minutes now.
Well, I'm looking at the book, and I'm really fascinated by some of the titles and the chapters. Dr. Wallach made a comment that Black Americans shed their chains made of iron and the whites only ballot, but they've been enslaved by new masters, particularly doctors in white coats. I find that pretty profound, and I think it's been a suspicion of many blacks throughout the years that we've never had an instance where we were totally free, and now we're looking at a new type of emotional and physical bondage. And I look through the chapters, you talk about hypertension, cancer, blood pressure. What is the underlying thesis for you to make such a statement?
Okay, very good. The short version is this. All vertebrates, including human beings, that's where my thesis is in the Smithsonian Institute, all vertebrates, including humans, require 90 essential nutrients, 60 minerals, 16 vitamins, 12 minerals, 3 fatty acids, with which your stem cells maintain, repair, and rebuild new cells of every tissue, okay? Whether it's bones and cartilage, liver, kidneys, brain, eyes, everything. But your body needs these 90 essential nutrients. Your body has the capacity to rebuild itself and maintain itself, but it requires these nutrients. Now, back in the days of slavery, the slaves would live to be 112, 115 years of age, and the master would die at 40 or 50. Okay? And the reason was this. The slaves were eating the things that the white guy didn't want.
That's right.
The slaves were eating things that had more nutrition in it. And the slaves were putting wood ashes into the garden, which were minerals. And so they'd eat the carrots and the beets and the peas that would suck up those minerals, whereas the white guy, he was just eating wheat bread, okay, which was supposed to be the big thing from Europe, right? And so that's why the white guys died early and the slaves lived to be 112 to 115. And this is quite common around the world because of that disparity in eating habits. And so I learned when I was in Africa from the tribes that did very well.
Okay.
What they ate, how they ate, and so forth. And of course, that was the genesis of the books.
I mean, it's a fascinating read. And
Slave Quarter Cures. Mm-hmm.
I think
Thank you
have put something in concrete and tangible form. What has been a myth, a thought, a question for many, not just blacks but people in general, that some of these issues and some of these maladies that affect the community disproportionately, there is a foundation, and it's not just in our imagination.
Yes. No, it's actually well documented. Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, you definitely enlightened me on a lot of things. I always knew that bad food was good for you, but we had no choice. We seem to live longer. Oh, absolutely, Miss Nelson. I'm quite sure you want to weigh on this. We have 5 minutes before we wrap this up.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting conversation, and I give Dr. Wallach props for, quite frankly, calling out the health industry, and I think you guys touched on it, but many of us in this room know, but, in the Black community, there has always been a stigma of going to the doctors, and especially here in Maryland with all that happened with Johns Hopkins and Johns Hopkins history. And, in my family, many times the elders say, why are you going to the doctor? You can just cure it, with something that we have in the house, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what all of our grandmothers said and things like that.
No, they used to tell me
I think what you touch on is important and huge, and I really hope people, are listening to what you're saying, to hopefully live long, healthy lives, as I think we all should have.
Mm-hmm. Well, I urge people to read those 2 books, Slave Quarter Cures and Black Gene Lies. And, of course, I'll give you one statistics from Johns Hopkins from Baltimore, Maryland. And I'm in Baltimore right now myself, giving lectures. And this came out in 2016. Johns Hopkins came out and said that each year in America, medical doctors are the 3rd leading cause of death in America. Doctors kill, that's the word they use. Now, this is Johns Hopkins, not me. I'm just quoting them. They said doctors kill 251,000 patients each year in hospitals as a result of simple mistakes. How many businesses could stay in business if they kill 251,000 customers every year? Okay, well, doctors do, because everybody says go see your doctor. Well, you want to shorten your life? Go see your doctor. You want to add 25 to 50 years to your life? You learn how to take care of yourself. Avoid the bad stuff. Take the 90 essential nutrients as a supplement. People say, well, my doctor said I can just eat well and get everything I need. Well, that would be like saying just put dirt from Texas in your car. Put 6 quarts of dirt from Texas in your car. You can save a lot of money. Don't put oil in there. No. You need to supplement, because plants only need 3 elements from the soil. You need 6. You'll be 57 short if you're just eating well.
Wow. I just want to say I want to thank my guest for being on today. And before we go, I'm gonna ask our guest. I'm gonna ask her to tell her how can we find out more about your about the doctor. What's the website or something you can give us?
Absolutely. And Dr. Wallach is actually going to be in town here in just a couple of weeks. So if people want to come and join us there, that's awesome. But let me tell you really fast, one of my favorite lines that Dr. Wallach uses, and it kind of brings us all back around to the MFL. And that line is, exercise without supplementation is suicide. Because when we sweat, we don't just sweat out salt, we don't just sweat out one thing, but it's a whole soup of the vitamins and minerals. So that's why it's so important to supplement, especially when you're an athlete. So Dr. Wallach will be joining us on Friday, February 21st at the Washington Times building, 7 p.m. And then also on Saturday, February 22nd, at the Waterford Convention Center in Springfield, Virginia. Let me give you the phone number to call. We have health coaches standing by. We work with each person and getting them on the best nutritional supplementation program for them. So everybody is very individualized. But that number is 866-822-2666.
All right, thank you. And before I want to also turn to my co-host, Mr. Gatewood. How can they reach you, Mr. Gatewood?
Well, thank you. I can be reached at marketingpulpit.com. My company, Gatewood Marketing and Web, we're at 9701 Apollo Drive in Largo, Maryland. But you can also call us at 301-839-2836. Go to marketingpulpit.com. I'm also on Radio 1 every Friday at 10:30 a.m. We bring the good marketing gospel, helping companies benefit, grow, and succeed. And you can find me on Radio 1 every Friday at 10:30 a.m.
And Miss Nelson, my co-host, and you and Mr. Gatewood seem to be getting all the awards. How can they reach you too?
Sure, I'm on social media at The Real K Nelson on Facebook, Kelsey Nicole Nelson, and my website, KelseyNicoleNelson.com.
And give them the MFL stuff, Kelsey, please.
Sure. So keep connected with the Minor Football League on Facebook at MFL, on Twitter at MFL Experience, and on Instagram at Experience the MFL. And also you can check out our shows on SoundCloud, on Mixcloud, and of course continue to listen to us each and every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. And be sure to download the DC Radio app.
And I want to thank Mr. Maselli for being here with us. I'm your host, Richard Myles, for Inside the MFL. And I also want to say we definitely are excited about going to Africa.
My goodness.
We got 5 more GMs that are flying into Washington next week. We're excited about that. But, you know, health and wellness is very, very important. I can't say that enough. And although, you know, I always say information is power, sometimes, you know, because you don't know something, not knowing is really bad. So I think you can convey on that. We got a couple of more minutes, Ms. Nelson. Won't you, we got 3 more minutes. Won't you wrap that up for us and tell them your opinion?
So the Minor Football League is known as the laboratory of change, and then that laboratory of change is where the health and wellness component come in. And I think what makes the Minor Football League separate from other sports leagues is that they're not just caring about athletes' bodies and their mental health on the football field, but after. And that's why I brought up the CTE question earlier.
I thought you were trying to mention me on the slide, because, you know, they say most ball players crazy. I thought you were trying to get me. I ain't mean to cut you off, but I just had to cut in there, you know.
It might have been subliminal. You never know. But I think it's a very important topic now. I think that's why we see people trying to make the game safer. And I know there's some still critics out there that believe, that it doesn't exist. There are some that do say it exists. And just in my experience, I've heard both sides in interviews I've done. But I think Dr. Wallach's experience with some top athletes and helping them to get back and change their lives. And anytime we're helping people to live longer and be stronger, I mean, I think it's magnificent. And I applaud the MFL for stepping into that space as a sports league and hopefully setting the way for other leagues to kind of follow suit and leading by example. So I applaud you, Mr. Myles.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I want to thank our special guest, Doc. I can't say enough about you. And matter of fact, I'm looking forward to meeting you along with the rest of my staff. And Robert, we got a couple of minutes left. You know, our guru, about the importance of owning franchise. Maybe a quick 10 seconds.
Well, I want to thank on the MFL for being one of the groundbreakers on health and wellness and championing that, but also championing economic empowerment and building businesses in our community. This partnership we have with the continent of Africa is a manifestation and expansion of our mission of building businesses in the community and putting people to work, and now expanding that mission into Africa. And so MFL, you're not just about sports, you're also about health, and you're also about economic empowerment. So I say hats off to you.
Yes, and we got to definitely have our guru here. And also, I want to thank Miss Kelsey Nelson, Mr. Robert Gatewood. I want to thank our special guest. Don't want to forget Mr. Maselli over there. Jumbo. Go and give us a word right quick before we get off the air.
Well, there's nothing much I can talk about. Just giving you kudos to all of you, and a thank you for Dr. Wallach. And thank you, Sheryl Morley, and we can't wait to see each and everyone to see Dr. Wallach here coming up in the next few weeks. Thank you again, and I hope to see you, MFL, in Africa.
You can wrap us up, Kelsey.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for listening. And as always, be sure to keep inside the MFL. Signing out, I'm Kelsey Nicole Nelson, joined by Richard Myles Sr., Robert Gatewood, Sheryl Morley, Dr. Wallach, and Bruno Maaza. Thanks for listening.
In DC, for DC, DC Radio, 96.3 HD4, and DCRadio.gov.